Hey, good afternoon, guys. It's Ryan Herrin here from Paintings by Night, and it's freezing today here in East Tennessee. But I wanted to show you all a really fast demo. Hopefully it can be of some help to you all who have had questions on how I go about priming my panels that I paint on, my hardboard panels. So grab a cup of coffee and hope you enjoy. Finally, the very last thing you'll need to prime your panels is a belt sander. I'm joking. So if you'll notice, what I've done here is actually just taken a very light grit sandpaper and sanded the panels because when you first get these, they'll be very slick and makes it a little bit difficult to apply the acrylic gesso. So by lightly sanding before you apply the gesso, it actually allows that board to absorb the gesso, and that way you can paint the next acrylic layers easier over the top of that. Oh, before I get started on showing you how to prime the panels, I don't think you all have seen my messy random art setup studio thing. But this is where all of the magic happens. I've got an area, a small wooden desk. I used to have a computer sitting on, and I've pretty much turned that into my area where I do some of my smaller paintings. There's an area on the side where I've put a thick piece of glass, and I've taped it off, and that serves as a really nice palette. And the cool thing about that, it's a neutral color. So it lets you actually see, the true value of the colors that you're mixing. Got some of my painting mediums here, and a bunch of mason jars and vases where I keep some of the brushes that I use, and my keyboard where I do some sound mixing when I have time, extra frames that I'll probably never use, and a big easel where I do my large paintings. And I also have I have this really inexpensive fold-out wooden table, and on top of that table I've put another thick piece of glass, a panel underneath it that I've primed like a neutral gray color. Again, any neutral color serves as a really good background, when you're mixing your colors. There's some paintings I've done on paper that are just sitting there to dry, but that's the palette that I use for my large paintings. And of course, the dog crates serve as an excellent place to store extra canvases and panels. So again, it's a random mess, but it definitely works for me. And here is the part where I use the regular white gesso to apply to the hardboard panel. And I'm just using a very inexpensive gesso brush to do this. And it doesn't have to be perfect. Like I said, the panels are already sanded, so that's going to allow that gesso to adhere to the hardboard much better. Alright, so here's the heavy type of gesso that I was talking about. So I'm just going to dip my knife into that. This stuff's really thick. And go to one of my panels and just start smearing it on. And you're going to want to cover, that first, or those first couple initial layers that you added with the brush. So basically you just cover the whole panel, and it's just like icing a cake. Now, again, this stuff is so thick, you could, if you wanted, you could build it up you know, to a texture like that. But you know, for a landscape, especially a small landscape, most times, you know, I don't want it this textured, of course. So I'm just going to kind of smooth it out, and I basically do that, like I said, all across each board until I get, you know, the desired texture and consistency that I think will look good for the style of painting that I want to paint. Okay, so this panel has been heavily textured with the Liquitex acrylic gesso with the palette knife, and for this particular one I'll be painting a still life painting. Now, mainly I guess consider myself a landscape painter, but occasionally I branch off and do like an abstract or a still life, just to change things up a bit. But when I do a still life on panel with the heavy textured gesso, I'll normally texture it. Well, you can see the cracks already. This is still wet, by the way, so I don't want to touch it. But it's really heavily textured around the edges. Now, as I move towards the center, where the main focal point or subject is going to be, I actually smooth that out even more. And so you can kind of see it's a lot smoother where I'm going to paint the main subject matter in this painting, and then around it it's going to be like the background of the heavy textured gesso. Now what that does, once that dries, that creates almost a three-dimensional type of an effect for the painting, for the still life, or whatever it is that you want to use as the main. Oh man, I just put my finger in it as the main focal point. But anyway, that's just to show you a little bit about how I go about doing these panels. And again, there's a million and one different ways. Some people, there's absolutely nothing wrong with using a brush in, you know, 2 or 3 layers to if you want a smoother effect. But you know, 7 times out of 10 I do like the gesso and applied with the trusty palette knife here. So I hope all this helps out a little bit. If you had any questions about, you know, priming hardboard panels for oil paintings, if you guys have any questions at all, feel free to comment down below or send me an email, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that I can. Don't forget to click the thumbs up button and subscribe if you enjoyed this, and I look forward to seeing you guys again soon. Take care and God bless.